There is a version of you that nobody in this country was supposed to see coming. A black man, in the most elite, most classified, most dangerous units the United States military has ever built, not as a diversity statistic, not as a symbol, as the most capable operator in the room, trained harder, tested longer, and carrying something extra that no selection course ever put on the list. The weight of knowing that in every room you enter, you were being watched differently, evaluated differently, and that the only answer to that has ever been the same one: perform at a level that leaves no room for the conversation. They didn't see you coming. They still don't. That has always been your advantage. Delta Force. The unit doesn't exist, not officially. The Army denies it while quietly funding it at a level that would make a small country nervous. You survived a selection with no ceremony, no patch, no handshake at the end, just the slow realization that everyone who was going to stop already had, and you were still there. You were one of very few black operators to make it through, not because the standard was different, because the standard was identical for everyone, and you met it completely. That distinction matters to you. You didn't want a door held open. You wanted the door, and you went through it on your own terms. The culture inside this building is flat, silent, and precise. No ranks spoken out loud, first names, call signs, and a shared understanding that the only biography that matters here is what you do when it counts. But you came in understanding something the selection process doesn't teach, that for you, there is no margin for an off day, no room for average. The black operator who is merely good gets filed in a category. The one who is exceptional gets filed as an operator. You chose your category before you ever walked through the door. You feel the scan when you walk into a new room. 2 seconds, eyes moving, registering, filing. You have felt it your entire life. In this building, it ends faster than anywhere else you have ever been, because competence in Delta is the only language everyone speaks fluently. You breach the second door, the hostage is in the corner, you cut the ties, you say 3 words, you move. Your team sergeant looks at you the way serious people look at each other after serious work. Not through you, not past you, at you, level and clean. That look took time to earn. You knew it would. You came prepared to earn it. Nobody outside that building will ever know what happened inside it. That's the job. But Delta operates at the edge of what the military admits to. The Rangers operate at the edge of what the enemy sees coming. 75th Ranger Battalion. 3,500 operators across 5 battalions. The Army's hammer, dropped fast, dropped hard. 3 in the morning before the sun has any vote in the matter. Ranger School was 62 days across Georgia, the mountains, and the swamps. 4 hours of sleep, 1,600 calories a day. By week 3, you were seeing shapes that weren't there. By week 5, you had reclassified your body's complaints as background noise. You finished. A lot of people didn't, including people who looked at you on day 1 like the math wasn't going to work in your favor. The culture here is loud, combustible, unit proud. The social architecture is thicker than Delta. More people, more unwritten agreements about who belongs where. And in that architecture, being black means something specific. It means you walk into the room already having to answer a question nobody asked out loud. Can you actually do this? Every black ranger answers that question the same way. They strap the weight on and they run faster than the doubt. You make the record so undeniable that the architecture has to rearrange itself around you, not because you changed anyone's mind with words, because you showed up to every evolution, every rotation, every 3 in the morning jump, and you performed. The airfield is yours in 11 minutes. The door is already open by the time everyone else arrives. Rangers lead the way. You led it first. But a raid force takes ground. What comes next builds something that outlasts the mission entirely. Special Forces, Green Berets. You have been in this village for 47 days. You speak the language well enough to understand the pauses. This is patience weaponized. You are building a fighting force from nothing, out of people who have every reason to trust no one, certainly not a soldier from a government with a complicated history in this part of the world. Being black in the Green Berets introduces a layer that nobody briefs you on. You are an American soldier representing American power in places that have felt American power in ways that were not gentle. And you carry a face that America itself has not always treated with the dignity it asks these countries to accept. You hold all of that. You do not perform your way around it. You sit with it across the fire, and you let the work speak honestly. One night the village elder looks at you, and the calculation in his face is different from how he looked at your teammates, not because you told him anything about yourself, because he recognized something. The specific posture of a person who has learned to carry weight that was never evenly distributed. The wall comes down half a second sooner. You use that opening with full integrity. You say nothing about it to anyone. Your 12-man team shifts the balance of an entire province. It appears years later as a footnote. But now the ground disappears beneath you entirely. 160th Soar, the Night Stalkers. You fly at night, at low altitude, in weather that has already grounded every commercial aircraft in the region. 4-tube night vision, depth perception in absolute darkness. The landing zone tonight is a 40-foot rooftop surrounded by power lines in a city that will never know you were there. You land on it because your hands know what to do before your mind has finished the sentence. Black pilots in the 160th are rare. You know the number. You knew it before you screened. You screened anyway, because the rarity of a thing has never been an argument against doing it. It has always been an argument for doing it better than anyone thought possible. Every unit on this list gets inserted by you. Delta, DevGru, Rangers. None of them reach the target without the 160th. You are the reason the mission is possible. You are also the last name mentioned when it's over. You have made peace with invisible contribution. That education began long before flight school. It began every time you built something that benefited a room that didn't fully acknowledge you were in it. You pull back from the infill. You hold at altitude in total blackout. You are already close. You have always been closer than anyone realized. What comes next makes the 160th look like it operates in full daylight. DevGru, SEAL Team 6. The unit that killed bin Laden now operates in a shadow that fame made stranger, not lighter. You were already elite when you screened, multiple deployments, the Trident, a reputation that entered rooms before you did. The screening broke people who had no business being broken. It wasn't testing endurance, it was testing the architecture of your decisions when everything has gone wrong and the only thing left in the room is who you actually are. You can count the black operators at this level on one hand. You are aware of that number at all times, not as a burden, as a fact you metabolized long ago and converted into fuel. Every evolution you complete, every standard you exceed, every mission you execute without error is a data point in a record that extends beyond your own career. You understand that without being precious about it. You just do the work. You have stood in buildings whose walls are lined with the faces of the men who came before. None of those faces look like yours. You have held that fact the way you hold everything that could cost you something. Quietly, completely, without allowing it a single second of your performance. You are here to add your face to that wall, not in a photograph, in the record of what this unit accomplished while you were in it. Tonight is a maritime hostage rescue, the 401st time you have run this evolution. You think about the door. It opens, but the ocean has its own rules. U.S. Navy SEALs. 58 degrees, 22 minutes. Your hands have stopped sending full reports. Buds was 6 months. Hell Week was 5.5 days with no sleep, continuous cold, and instructors searching specifically for the moment you decide to stop. 25% of your class made it through. You were one of very few black men in that class. You were aware of it every single day, not because anyone made it a conversation, because you made it one inside yourself. You decided early that you were not going to be the black man who made it to Hell Week and stopped. Not because of ego, because of everyone who would come after you and need to know it was possible. You stopped negotiating with yourself on day 4 and you became something that the cold water and the sand and the sleep deprivation could not. U.S. Navy SEALs. 58 degrees, 22 minutes. Your hands have stopped sending full reports. Buds was 6 months. Hell Week was 5.5 days with no sleep, continuous cold, and instructors searching specifically for the moment you decide to stop. 25% of your class made it through. You were one of very few black men in that class. You were aware of it every single day, not because anyone made it a conversation, because you made it one inside yourself. You decided early that you were not going to be the black man who made it to Hell Week and stopped. Not because of ego, because of everyone who would come after you and need to know it was possible. You stopped negotiating with yourself on day 4 and you became something that the cold water and the sand and the sleep deprivation could not reach. You surfaced 10 meters from the dock. The rebreather leaves no trace. In this water, in this dark, you are not a symbol. You are not a representation. You are a person trained past the point where most people stop. The water doesn't know your name. The mission doesn't know your history. Out here, there is only what you can do. That has always been the most clarifying thing you have ever felt. You move. And then there is a unit that never touches the water, never fires the first shot, and is responsible for whether any of those shots land correctly. 24th Special Tactics Squadron. You jumped first. You always jump first. You landed in hostile territory, alone, with a radio and a laser, and the job of turning a patch of open ground into an air corridor before anyone else arrives. You are FAA-certified air traffic control. You are also a trained special operations combatant, both completely true at the same time. Being black in the 24th means carrying a specific kind of irony. You are the most essential person on the battlefield that nobody is looking for, the connection between air and ground that makes every other unit function. And you have spent a lifetime being essential in rooms that were slow to say so. You learned early that the acknowledgement was never the point. The outcome was the point. 9 seconds after you paint the target, the tree line is gone. The element moves. Nobody asks how. You don't need them to. You have spent a career being the force nobody identified until the moment the outcome changed. You have learned that the most consequential presence is often the one that leaves the least evidence of itself. That lesson did not begin in the Air Force. It began much earlier, in much smaller rooms, with much higher personal stakes. And then there is someone who operates so far upstream that the shooters don't know their name exists. Intelligence Support Activity, Task Force Orange. You have been in this city for 6 weeks. Cover identity, local number, an apartment above a bakery. You know the target's Tuesday coffee shop, his route, the one day his security has a gap. You know because you have been watching longer than the mission has officially existed. ISA was built because the military kept launching operations without adequate intelligence and kept paying the price. You work months ahead of the shooters. You map everything, hand it off clean, disappear. You will never meet the men who use your work. You will never know what they did with it. Here is what nobody writes in the after-action report. Being black in ISA is the ultimate convergence of a particular set of skills. Because you have spent your entire life learning how to move through spaces that were not designed for you without leaving evidence of the effort that required, how to walk into rooms that were built to make you visible and make yourself invisible instead, how to be assessed on entry and give them nothing useful, how to be underestimated so completely that by the time anyone recalibrates, the work is already done. That is not a skill the government taught you. That is a skill America gave you whether it meant to or not. And the most classified unit in the U.S. Special Operations community runs on it. They just finally gave it a job title. The target rounds the corner on schedule. 4 words typed. Phone face down. 1 slow sip of coffee. Somewhere, a Delta element is walking through a door knowing exactly what is behind it because of 6 weeks of your patience and a lifetime of being underestimated. You leave the cafe. You don't look back. Here is what you know after all of it. You were never supposed to be here. Not according to the history, not according to the numbers, not according to every room that did the scan and filed you somewhere less than what you are. You were supposed to be somewhere easier, somewhere more expected, somewhere that asked less of you and therefore produced less from you. Instead, you are here, in the most demanding, most classified, most unforgiving professional environments on the planet, performing at the highest level, carrying the standard weight plus the extra weight that nobody officially acknowledges, but everybody who looks like you knows is real, and you have never once put it down. Not because the weight wasn't heavy, because you decided what it was for. Every black operator who comes after you will walk into a room where the scan is slightly shorter, where the architecture shifts slightly faster, where the record that precedes them includes your name, even if your name is classified, even if your name is never spoken, even if your name is only a number in a file that gets reviewed by people who will never meet you. You built that. In the dark, under pressure, at a level that left no room for any other conversation. You didn't come here to prove something to them. You came here because this is exactly where you were always going. And the most dangerous thing about you was never the training. It was that nobody saw you coming. They still don't.